Hello and welcome to Frame.io Live. My name is Ryan. I'm an enterprise customer success manager right here at Frame.io based out of New York City. Thank you so much for joining me today for your ultimate Frame.io admin guide. I have an awesome agenda for you today. We're going to be going through a complete discussion about who is who within the account. We're also going to chat a little bit more about creating and managing teams, inviting in users, and going through some of the global account settings. But with that in mind, I would love to make sure that we get the most out of the session. So feel free to find that comments section. I would love to hear where you're tuning in from and anything that you would like to get out of today's session. But along the way, feel free to interrupt me with any questions. I want to make sure that I can get to all of those and we could have a little bit of fun today. Whether you're brand new to Frame.io or a seasoned pro, I'm sure that you will get something out of today's session. I'll also be using that comment section to drop in a couple of support articles. So in case you're watching this as either pre-recorded content or you're going to share some of these support articles with the rest of your team, make sure you keep an eye out for those along the way too. Hopping right on in, our agenda for today. We're going to be chatting about an overview of Frame.io, not just enterprise. Although I am an enterprise customer success manager, so I would be remiss to not discuss some of the features that are specific to our enterprise customers. But mostly we're going to spend some time chatting about the admin's key roles and responsibilities. We're also going to talk about setting up your account and some configuration, some licensing and user roles, and then of course some account settings and other features too. Some things that differentiate an enterprise account from other features would be multi-team management and then some annual contract terms, also some security settings. But every single account will allow you to do review and collaboration. That's something that we are known for, in addition to high-speed uploads and downloads. But what's an admin specifically? Hopefully, this is some of you here on the call today. Admins have a little bit more global control that other users do not. Admins specifically have the ability to create and manage workspaces. They could add, remove, and manage specific users. They also can change some of the settings that other users do not have the ability to. And then typically, admins will work with account team members like myself. But hopping right on in, I would love to start with just a couple of terms. We use the term teams as the highest level of organizations within your account, meaning that teams are the varying workspaces where you'll see projects and content. There are elements of visibility and permissions, also some access that you'll want to consider when thinking about how you set up your team or teams, and also who gets invited into these specific spaces. In this particular example, the names of the teams that I've set up are Green Knight and Marcel the Shell, but various users are invited to view content on a per team basis. So users can be invited to specific teams. So for example, if you only have users working on Green Knight, you can invite them into that team exclusively. But teams have varying levels of visibility and permissions that are set by the admins to determine the level of privacy that you prefer, with the option also to hide teams to specific users if desired. If you're an enterprise customer, you can create as many teams as you would like, but depending on your account type, you may only be able to create one, maybe 2 or 3 teams as well. So it could be worthwhile to start thinking about that now. And then within your teams are projects. So as you can see here within this example, within my Green Knight team, there's several projects that exist, including 30-second teaser, full trailer, and also archived. Projects will always exist within teams, and once a user is added into a team, they can view all public projects. Individual projects can also be made private. You can see here that there's a lock icon next to the archived project, but it's important to note that content is archived at the project level, so this could also better inform how you set up your teams and projects. And then lastly, files and folders. This is what takes up all of the content, what occupies your account's storage. This is where all of your assets will live. And they're not visible on the left-hand side. All of this will actually live within the project specifically, but I would like to highlight that the folder structure is complex. So you can house subfolders, you can house various file types, PDFs, video, audio files, you name it. And for those of you with us here on the call today, obviously you have a very specific use case for how you currently manage content and also who reviews content for approval. So put on that organizational hat for me now. We're also going to walk through a couple of examples. The most common account types that I work with are brands, agency, and media and entertainment. So I actually would like to use those 3 examples and discuss some of the different types of ways that you can set up your users and your account for these examples that I've seen in the past. So if you're a brand, typically I've seen teams set based on a seasonal campaign, various business units such as marketing, internal, or production. You could even make teams different mediums like broadcast or social, maybe even based on the region that you are in. Obviously, we are all remote now, so that could be a wise way to set up these teams. And then the projects that fall within those teams, I've typically seen them be independent video projects for the content you're working on, specific use cases, maybe even the stage of development, like production or editorial. And then lastly, files and folders. That could be organized in the same way that you have it organized now. So think approval stages, maybe even pre production materials like proposal decks, maybe lookbooks. And then for our agency folks out there, I've typically seen teams based organized on clients or groupings of clients based on various business segments, maybe even different regional offices. But remember, you can set the level of permissions as who has access to what on a team by team basis. This means that all of your assets could be separate from one another. You could even invite clients into this workspace if you need them to be able to upload or download content. For agencies, typically I see projects organized based on campaigns or projects for a specific client, maybe even based on the region where these clients are located. And then files and folders could be broken out into assets and deliverables, specific folders for each project. If you have some freelancers that work, you could also create files and folders where those individuals could upload content too. And then lastly, for our media and entertainment folks out there, typically I see teams based set as either specific film or television projects, maybe even a specific series that you're working on. Projects could be organized based on different seasons of a serialized program, distinct business segments for a film project, like the stages of development, production, editorial, marketing, social media, etc. And then files and folders could be structured and customized based on your editorial and review process, even based on your approval process too, and who needs to see what content at what stage of development. But now that we've covered the various ways that you could organize your content, I do want to highlight the various roles and permissions that exist within the account so that way you know who you can invite in. And then later on, we'll discuss how you can actually invite in these users. So starting with the admins, I know this is a whole bunch of you here on the call with me today, but the admins have the ability to make global changes to the account settings. They are the only individuals that can create and delete teams. So these individuals will create those specific workspaces. They also invite in any team members. Team managers, I believe, is kind of a underutilized role in my experience. They have some, but not all admin permissions. Think maybe the right-hand person to the admin, somebody who, if the admin is not available or they're out of the office, are able to adjust the settings for specific teams, also add in additional users. Tamara, thank you. An amazing tool. I think so too. Glad you're getting something out of this session so far. Team members, if I were to guess, a majority of the users that are on your account will be team members. They're added at the per team basis. Remember earlier I said you can have teams and then all the projects that exist within it. By default, any team member will have automatic access to every single project within a team. Team members also have the ability to upload and manage content. They can create folders through the entire review and approval process. They also can share out externally. A collaborator. Typically, collaborators I see to be freelancers or some people who need to see some content, but not all content. Collaborators only have access on a per project basis, meaning you could have users that have access to one project within a team, multiple projects within a team. Really depends on how you want to situate those users. I would also like to highlight that collaborators do not have the ability to view private content. They also do not have the ability to share out externally. All of those users will take up a seat within your account. But the last user who will not, here on the very far right-hand side, is the reviewer. Reviewer is anybody who's receiving a link that you share out with a link to your content. They can mark up, they could leave comments, they could do the entire review and approval process, but they will only see the content that you share with them. They will not actually have access to the account or a login unless you want them to. Let's use those same examples of brand, agency, and media and entertainment, and also review who some of these individuals could be specifically within your account. So for brands, admins typically I see are the department heads, IT administrators, somebody who has more global view and access. Team managers typically are head producers, maybe even a team lead. Team members A majority of your staff. So producers, staff editors, creators, people who will be uploading and managing projects, sharing out externally. And then collaborators typically are freelancers. So any freelance editors, assistant editors, DITs. Remember, these individuals do not have the ability to edit or remove other users' content or also share out externally too. And then for any agency folks out there, typically the head of production, again, any IT administrators, team managers could be the primary client liaison or lead producer, somebody who's going to be managing those spaces. And then team members, typically any client facing personnel, any producers, main staff, editorial team members, creative or marketing folks, and then reviewers, any internal stakeholders, maybe even the talent if you're sharing content with them as well. And I hope that you're sensing a theme as I move on to our media and entertainment example. Admins, again, have the global control. So, executive producers, production or company owner. I would like to highlight that you can set as many admins as you would like within the account, but I would use a little bit of be a little bit more conservative with who you allow to be an admin. They have access to your billing information. They also have access to all content too. Team managers, typically I've seen specifically for media and entertainment, be producers or primary editors, maybe a project lead. Team members, primary editors, any staff, and then collaborators being any assistant editors, part of the production crew, and then reviewers could be the director, the talent, or maybe even the distributor. Mate from Hungary, welcome. Glad to have you on the call with me today. I do want to share out an article now, specifically outlining user roles and types. This article is great. It also gives a full breakout of who is who with some checkboxes. That way you can keep this on hand. I have this bookmarked. I would encourage you to do the same. Perfect. I did want to move over into my specific Frame.io instance. You're welcome to follow along with me, or if you want to pull up your own Frame.io account and create some teams together, you're more than welcome to do so. I did want to pause here for just a moment though, and see if there's any questions about user roles and types before we actually move on to creating teams and inviting users into those spaces. Feel free to drop any questions that you have now in that comment section. Perfect. Not seeing any questions come through, so let's go ahead and move right on. I'm here within my Frame.io instance. We are completely web-based with the exception of some of our integrations. So you can certainly connect Frame.io to your Premiere Pro panel, After Effects, and Final Cut. The app that we have that you can download is our Frame.io Transfer app, which is the quickest way to be able to both upload and download content. We also have an iOS app and an iPad app too. But everywhere that you will be able to access content is directly here through the web, which is just app.frame.io. You can see here that I already have a couple of teams that exist, also a couple of projects, and I have some media that lives in here as well. So just for some reference in real life time, you can see here that I have my Frame.io Live series, which is the name of my team, and then my projects here be my drip ad campaign and my spring ad campaign, and then here on the right-hand side is all of my media. Let's just do a brief tour of what you're looking at before we hop into some of the account settings. Here on the left-hand side, there's a couple of tiles. We call this our account switcher, meaning that if you are a collaborator in one account, but maybe an admin in another, you use the same email address to sign in. This is just a quick way for you to be able to go back and forth between multiple accounts that you use the same email address to log into. Up here at the top, you're going to see the name of your account, which is where you're able to access your settings. There's a search box where you could search for any assets that live within your media panel. If you're an enterprise customer, you'll have an inbox. We call this our secure inbox. This means that if you have a Frame.io account and somebody shares a review link with you, you're able to access it here within your account as opposed to having to comb through your email. And then right here is where those teams and projects live. Moving over to the right-hand side, you're going to see media panel, which is where all of your content will be. There's also a couple of links here in the header, both for review links and presentation links. This is where you're able to review any content that you've shared out externally. C2C connections here stands for camera to cloud connections. This is where you're able to enable any hardware that you want synced up with Frame.io, meaning that the second you call cut, content will auto upload into your media panel. This is where you're able to manage that content. Moving over to the right-hand side, you're going to get just a brief snapshot of how much content exists within this designated space. You can see here that I have 14 items with almost 50 gigs worth of data. I'm able to customize how I want to view my content. Up here on the right is where I'm able to see the list of users that are currently associated with this designated project. So this is where collaborators and team members can see. I also can share out content externally. I also can do a new file upload, also create some additional folders from here. Let's go ahead and hop into some of the settings. That way we can create a team together and also add in a couple of users. If you're an admin, you will see all of these account settings here. Account settings, users and teams, groups, branding, and billing. If you're not an admin, you'll just see some of these personal settings, which we'll get to here in just a moment. Underneath my users and teams tab is where I am going to get a general overview of all of my teams. From here, I can also see the number of projects that are associated with those teams. I also have the ability to see the members that are in that space, the storage associated, and the level of privacy. All right, I need some help. What do we want to call our first team? Let's go ahead and create a team. Feel free to drop in the chat what you want me to name this team. I'll wait for somebody to post something and we'll give it a name. But while I'm waiting here, let's go ahead and talk about privacy. So do you want people to be able to actually see that this team exists? Yes or no? Every single individual that's a part of this space will have access to a team directory. So they're able to see the names of the teams, even if they're not a part of that space. So do you want people to be able to see that team directory visible or invisible? Totally up to you. The second is the level of access, open or restricted. If it's open, any member of your organization can see it. They also could add in users. If it's restricted, it means that members must be approved first before they could actually be welcomed into that space. So the difference being that if it's open, a user can see it and they can ask to join it, meaning that the admin will receive an email saying, hey, somebody's asked to join a specific team. Okay, let's go ahead and give our team a name. I saw a comment come through. Let's go ahead and name it social media. I also have the ability to set some allocation limits. So I can say I only want 10 members to be a part of this space. And let's go ahead and allocate 1 terabyte of space specifically for these users. These are soft limits, so there's not a hard limit you'll get cut off from your account or anything like that. It will just give you a banner up at the top if you reach these limits. Did want to drop in the chat an article that just speaks a little bit more about these allocation limits, but could be a great way, especially if you're managing a high volume of users and a high volume of storage. I know it's really easy these days to use up a lot of gigabytes worth of space, but it could be a great way to just stay on track for whatever you have designated for your account. And if you're an enterprise customer, you do have access to watermarking. There's a couple of different watermarks that exist. There is a watermark at the time of external sharing, meaning that a watermark will be burned into those assets for the individuals that view it. This watermark here is for any internal assets. Not as common, but certainly something if you're working on a hyper-specific or secure project, could be wise to add this in here too. All right, so we just created our social media team. It is visible, it is open. You can see here that I just created that space. I have a couple of other teams that already exist here, but let's go ahead and just hop into this social media team. You can see here that now I'm the only individual that's a part of it because I'm the one that created it. Let's go ahead and welcome in some users now. So I'm just going to go up here to the top left up to team members. This entire list that you're viewing are actually individuals that are already a part of some type of team within my account. So let's say, for example, I wanted to add in my colleague Adam into an existing team. He's already a part of another space. I could just click on Adam's name, and then down at the bottom it says this user is selected. Do I want to add him into a team? Do I want to delete him? Or do I want to log him out? So let's say I did want to add him specifically into our social media team that we just created. I could do that here just by selecting the name of that team and click save. But let's operate under the assumption that there's nobody yet within your account. Up here on the top right, I'm just going to select the invite users option. Then I'm going to get a couple questions. Where do I want to invite them into? Just one team or multiple teams? So I could select social media. I also could select my Sundance team, Frame.io live series. I can invite them into multiple spaces. But let's just go ahead and invite them into the social media team for now. I edit projects. Frame.io is a must-have tool. I agree. I feel like I should send you a t-shirt or something like that. Thank you for repping us. Glad this is something that helps. Cool. So now that we're here under invite new team members, we can add in a couple of email addresses. Let's go ahead and invite in Jane Doe. And let's say John Smith as well. I could keep this party going and add in a couple of lines if I wanted to add in additional users into this space as well. I would like to highlight that adding in these users will automatically add them in as a team member. If I wanted to add them in as something else, down here in the bottom right, I could change it to an admin if desired. Let's leave them as regular members for now. Once I click invite members, these users are then going to receive an email asking them to create a login if they don't have one already, or to sign in if they already have an existing Frame.io account, and then it'll add one of those little account titles on the left-hand side that I had showed earlier. But now that this invite is sent, let's go back over to my teams, my social media team. You can see here that under team members, these two users are pending. They haven't shown up yet because they don't have logins. So once these individuals are added in, it will allow them to do so. Here on the right-hand side where I could click Enable Team Management, that will then add those users as a team manager within the account. Remember, that's just one step beneath the admin. Let's say for this team specifically, I wanted to make some adjustments. Nothing's set in stone. So I'm here underneath my social media team. I'm just going to scroll all the way over to the right-hand side. There's these three dots. I can edit this team. Let's say, oops, I actually do want to make this one restricted. I can make edits to that team at any time. Up here on the top right corner where it says manage users, this is where I'm able to manage any collaborators that are associated with my account. Remember, collaborators are only added at the project level, so this is where I'm able to view all of them, edit them, remove them if desired. But let's say I wanted to add in a collaborator into my team. Let's go back over into our account. That's actually done directly within the project. So I just created this social media team. There's no projects in it yet. So let's go ahead and create a project. Similar to when I created the team, it's going to ask me a couple of questions around security, also some notification settings as well. So let's go ahead and say that we're working on a summer campaign for a social media team. Do I want anybody to be able to view it, public or private? If I make this private, admins or team members must actually approve those users. C2C connections, that's that camera to cloud connections that I mentioned earlier. Do you want to enable it specifically for this project? Then there's a couple other settings. Do I want collaborators to be able to download files, yes or no? And then what type of settings and notifications do I want users to receive? Anytime a new comment is made, new media is uploaded, a new person joins, etc., etc. So once I create this project, now I have the option to be able to upload content. But let's go ahead and just invite in a collaborator. Up here in the top right corner is where I could click that plus button. Let's say I wanted to add in John Doe specifically as a collaborator. This is where I would do so. So now you can see here that that individual is added as a collaborator within that designated project, different from the team member who has access to every project within that team. Perfect. Let's go back over into our account settings. I do want to drop in the chat an article around adding in team members for your reference. And if you're an enterprise customer, you are able to create a multi-team structure similar to what I have now, unlimited teams. We call it multi-team management. Super helpful, especially if you are working on a large scale. Shared in an article specifically around managing multiple teams. Any questions out there regarding creating teams, inviting in team members, or any of the user roles and types? Feel free to drop any questions that you have in the chat. But let's move on to some of our general account settings. So I'm just toggling over here to the top left underneath my account. These are global settings. This will apply to every team and every project. Only the admins can see this. First question is around download permissions. Do I want individuals to be able to download assets directly within my account? I can allow that to be collaborators and up, team members and up, or nobody at all. Invites. This is something that's not default within your account. This is something that does have to be enabled. Some team admins do not want team members to be able to invite in collaborators. They want total control. which I understand, especially if you're working on, again, a more black box or secure project. You can limit who can actually invite in collaborators. It is helpful to have team members to be able to invite in those users, especially if they're managing some freelancers or other folks. But you can enable or disable if you want team members to be able to invite in those lower user roles. And for our enterprise folks out there, we do have a wonderful feature called secure sharing. This is a security feature which will actually require that at the time of external sharing, a user signs into a Frame.io account. This will just ensure that the individual that you're sharing that review link with is the only one who can access it. So you can make this default on your account if desired, or you can also enable public links. You also have the ability to determine who can share out public links, even if the default is invite only. So this just gives you a little bit more control over that specific feature. C2C connections, camera to cloud. Right here is who can actually manage that camera to cloud connection. So if you want to enable collaborators to be able to do so or team members to be able to do so, this is where you're able to make those adjustments. I am going to drop in the chat now an article around C2C connections. Looks like there's a question from I Edit Projects. Is there or will there be an upload link that I can send to clients without adding them to a project? Right now, there's not. The only way that a user can upload content is if they are at least a collaborator. But collaborators are pretty easy to both add and remove. So typically what I encourage accounts to do is to add in those users as a collaborator. That way you just know who is uploading content. It gives you a full audit trail of those users specifically, but then you could also remove them as soon as they're done uploading content. Good question. Watermark ID. Again, this is just for our enterprise customers out there, but Watermark ID can both be for internal assets or externally shared assets. So you can require Watermark ID to be on any internal assets or downloaded content, but you also can make Watermark ID required on all externally shared links, or you could give your team some control to determine if they want to add a watermark at the time of external sharing or not. Every client, stakeholder, reviewer is a little bit specific about this. So really depends on the individual who's going to be reviewing that content and how you want to set up those settings. Let's say that we wanted to select the default watermark. We can do that here. We also can determine who can share out without watermark ID, ranging from team members up to nobody. Underneath this watermark ID template is where I can create any templates for my team specifically to go in and add in. Let's create a new template together. So let's go ahead and call this one social media summer campaign. It's like 60 degrees here in New York, so my mind is on summer already. But let's go ahead and add in a couple of those watermarks here. We can determine if those users have the name, email, IP address of the user who's viewing, the date and time. I also could add in some custom text. I also have the ability to adjust the text size ranging from small to huge, and then I can move this watermark specifically around anywhere that I want it to be located on the screen. I also can change the color of this watermark. So I get a couple of color options here. Let's go to make this one green. Let's make it medium. I also can determine if I want it to scroll or not. I can add in a text shadow, also change the opacity. So a couple of features that exist here for that watermark. And then the last feature that you're going to see here is for the Apple TV app, which is also an enterprise specific feature because it requires secure sharing. But users can view content on an Apple TV in 4K if desired. Super helpful if you have specific individuals that are viewing content in a boardroom or somewhere where there's an Apple TV that's connected. Sharing on a couple additional articles for these features. Let's go ahead and change some of these other settings too. Again, just underneath this account settings here, let's go to groups. Groups actually pertains to the time of external sharing, who's viewing it. So let's just say for all intents and purposes that I'm going to share my assets with the same group of users every single time. When I go to share out something for review, I can input all of those users' individual email addresses, or I could just create a group where I could add them all in at once. So let's go ahead and create this new group. Let's name it Assets for Brand. And let's give it a little emoji. And then from here, I can add in those specific members. So let's say I need to share it with John Doe and Jane Smith. Let's say I also need to share it with my colleague Luke, who I know will be viewing this content every time, and April. So theoretically, I'm going to add in all of these folks, assets for brand. Let's go back over into my Frame.io account. There's no assets that live there yet. So let's go over into this specific project. Let's say I wanted to share out this asset with those specific stakeholders. I'm going to click share, and we're going to do share for review. Here, I have a couple of options for what I want to do with this sharing. But here, instead of me having to input their email addresses, which I could do, like I could put Jane Smith and John Doe, but let's go ahead and do assets for brand, and then it's automatically going to add in all of those users' email addresses into this review link. So we'll just save you some time and energy if you're sending this review link to the same group of users each time. Let's go back over into our account settings. Branding is specific for specific teams. So for this specific social media team, I could add in a couple of different options. I could add in a team logo. I also can add some branded email notifications, meaning that anytime assets are shared out, or there's also some email notifications, you can have it be specific to your individual branding. You can see that now this is for us here at Frame.io. Also, the accent colors match that of our branding, just an added touch of professionalism to your content. Same goes for presentation pages. So if I wanted to share out a presentation link to an account showcasing some work and I wanted it to match their specific branding, just a way to add some custom flair. So I could add in my accent color. Let's make this one green. Let's change the background color to be gray. And then any text color could also be changed. Let's make this white. So just another way to add in a little bit of customization to have it match any branding that you're sharing out specifically. And then billing, this will also give you a general snapshot more than just your payment methods, but it'll also show you which type of plan that you're on. If you're on an enterprise plan, you are on a monthly contract. But if you're on a business plan or a retail plan, you'll probably see monthly payments here, which is where you're able to adjust any settings that you want, whether that's number of users or storage, etc. You're also going to see how much of your account is being utilized. So you can see active storage, archival storage, how many projects that exist, just a general overview. Every single user will see these personal settings. The team directory is what I mentioned earlier when it came to some of that restricted or fully visible content. So here within my team directory is where I can see these teams. Even for teams that I'm not a part of, I could request to join, which is where that restricted comes into play. This is where I'm also able to see any user that's a part of these spaces. Email and password is exactly what it sounds like, where I'm able to adjust my current email address or my password. I can also add in Google Auth. If you're an enterprise customer, you could add multi-factor authentication and SSO, something that could certainly save your team some time having to log in each time. Also just adds an extra layer of security. Profile. I would encourage that your team members add at least their name. This is where anytime your users add in any comments into an asset, this is the name that will be associated. You can see here I added in my nice little photo here, my name and my location, which is right here in the beautiful Brooklyn, New York. Notifications pertains to this individual user. So for me, as an individual user, I can select how frequently I want to receive email digests. If I want to see daily emails, I also can nail it down to immediate, every 15 minutes, 30, or hourly. And then I can also choose my time zone. Project subscriptions could be important, especially if I'm a team member. Remember, I'll be invited into every single project. Let's say there's one that isn't as important to the work that I'm working on. I can also shut off any projects that I'm subscribed to. So that way I just won't receive email notifications for a project that isn't as pertinent to my day-to-day work. So you can see here, I'm a part of a ton of projects. I would encourage your team to check this out, especially if they're receiving an influx of emails. Apps and integrations is where I'm able to connect a couple of our native integrations with our NLEs. Up here, you can see a highlight for our app for iPhone. We also have an app for iPad, like I mentioned earlier. There's a couple native integrations that we have with Vimeo and Slack. The Vimeo integration means that you could publish content directly to Vimeo from Frame.io. Slack integration means that you'll receive notifications anytime there's updates that occur within a designated project. From here, with these applications, specifically with Final Cut, Premiere, and After Effects, if you hit download for Premiere and After Effects, it'll actually bump this download directly into your Creative Cloud subscription. And then you can put your Frame.io panel directly within Premiere or After Effects, a really wonderful integration that could save you a ton of time. For any editors out there, or if you manage a team of editors, I highly encourage you to play around with the After Effects and Premiere Pro integration. You can actually sync up your timeline, meaning that any comments that occur within Frame.io could be synced up directly with the timeline that that editor is working on. Then these users that are working in After Effects could actually publish content directly from After Effects right back up into Frame.io without having to leave that panel at all. Works like magic. Super, super cool integration that exists. Connected apps will show anything that's associated. So you can see here that I have my Filmic Pro app connected, which is a camera to cloud enabled app actually. So I can publish content directly from my iPhone into my Frame.io account. That's connected here. We are open API. So there are a couple of other apps and connected apps that can be built out. Pretty common. I see accounts use Zapier a lot, which is some out of the box or pre-built solutions, especially if you have any project management software or other tools that are utilized. I would encourage you to check that out. And then also some cookie preferences that exist here too. There's also a couple of other dev tokens, actions, and apps if you are so inclined. We have covered a lot of ground today. We've gone over account user roles and types. We've also hopped into the settings. We have created some teams, invited users in. We've also gone through all of those global account settings. But I would like to highlight, even though we're coming to the end of today's session, that support does not stop here. We have an incredible support team who's available 24/7. I'm actually just zooming in right up here in the top right corner to the little question mark. If I click there, a little chat bubble is going to show. These users up here in the top are actually live users that are chatting right now. Our team is amazing. They are there to help. Uh, if you are not an enterprise customer, they get back to you in under 10 minutes. But if you are an enterprise customer, you do receive priority support. So you get support in typically less than 2 minutes, but they're available 24/7. So if you have any questions about user roles and types, something that you're just getting a little bit stuck in your account with, I would highly suggest that you go ahead and add that in here. You can message our team specifically here too. Perfect. I did also want to drop in the chat an article that shows what some of the differences are for our enterprise accounts. So I know that I've mentioned a couple of features specifically around security. But if you have additional questions, want to make that available here. Joey, how do you leave a team that you're no longer a part of? So let's say you don't want to be a part of a team any longer. You could ask that admin to delete you from that specific team. I would certainly recommend that you reach out to those individual users who added you into that space to delete you. So let's go into account settings back here. Users and teams. So for specific teams members that are part of a space, this is where you're able to edit and delete where those users are a part of. Good question. What other questions? Hit me with it. if you have to hop off for the day, thank you for joining me. But also, I can hang out here for a couple more minutes and answer any other questions that come through. I'll also do a shameless plug. I'll be right back here on Tuesday, leading a session that does a full end-to-end review of uploading content, also going through the entire review and approval process, sharing out externally, and organizing content. So if you enjoyed today's session, I would love to see you again back next Tuesday to have some more fun. But I'm not seeing any more questions come through. But if anything else comes up, feel free to use that chat bubble or that question for our teams. I hope that today was a helpful session getting you kickstarted in your journey with Frame.io. We're so happy to have you be a part of our community, honored to also be a part of your creative process. Thank you again so much for joining me today, wherever you're tuning in from. I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon, evening, or morning. Thanks again. Take care.